They call it the medical cliff, the point where insurance costs skyrocket and paperwork can ground even a veteran pilot overnight. After 60, experience means nothing to underwriters or to bureaucracy. Most people believe a Cessna is the only way to keep flying safely, but the safest plane for aging pilots is not what anyone expects. It is an 80-year-old machine, dismissed as a toy, engineered to make stall spins impossible, and legal to fly without a traditional medical. If this plane is so perfect, why did the world forget it, and who still trusts it with their freedom? A pilot's logbook can be spotless, decades of incident-free flying, thousands of hours in the air, yet the real threat isn't in the cockpit, it's in the mailbox. Insurance renewal notices arrive with numbers that climb faster than a Cessna on a cold morning. For pilots over 60, the first renewal after a birthday can bring a 15 to 30% jump in premiums, even if nothing else has changed. Brokers don't ask about your judgment or your landings. They ask your date of birth, and the answer costs you. By the early 70s, some companies stopped quoting entirely unless you accept bare-bones coverage or agree to fly only under perfect conditions. The message is clear: experience doesn't buy forgiveness, it buys suspicion. The real squeeze isn't just money. Every 2 years, or sometimes every 12 months, another stack of FAA medical paperwork lands on the desk. The rules say age isn't a disqualifier, but the forms don't care about rules. They care about numbers, blood pressure, cholesterol, EKG results, and every new test is another roll of the dice. Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, even a mild spike in blood pressure can trigger a deferral. That means more paperwork, more doctor visits, and an official letter stamped pending. Sometimes it's a denial. Sometimes it's a special issuance with strings attached and a calendar ticking down to the next round. The older you get, the shorter the certificate lasts. More exams, more chances for the system to find something interesting. Even pilots who feel sharp and fly regularly find themselves grounded by a bureaucratic technicality. A friend with a perfect safety record misses a renewal because his doctor flagged a minor arrhythmia. The FAA asks for more tests. Months pass. By the time the paperwork clears, the insurance has lapsed and the airplane sits gathering dust. The irony is bitter. The pilot is healthy enough to drive a car, but not, according to the paperwork, to fly the same routes he has flown for 40 years. For many, the cost isn't just the check they write to the broker or the doctor. It's the creeping fear that one morning, a letter will arrive and their flying days will be over, not because of a mistake in the air, but because of a number on a form. That's why so many pilots start looking for a way out, a loophole, a cheaper airplane, or just a chance to keep their wings without fighting the system. Climbing into a Cessna 172 is a test of joints before it is a test of skill. The step up from the ramp to the wing sits at about 20 inches, knee height for a teenager, a full stretch for anyone with a new hip or a 50-year-old back. Once you have hauled yourself inside, you wedge into a cockpit designed when average Americans were smaller and more limber. The seat rails creak, the yoke sits just above your knees, and the headliner bears the scars of 1,000 headset bumps. For a 60-year-old pilot, it is not just about getting airborne, it is about getting in and out without a pulled muscle. The so-called trainer airplanes that fill flight schools and rental fleets were not built for comfort. They were built for 20-year-olds learning to fly in the 1960s, not for pilots with titanium knees and reading glasses. The Cessna 150's cabin is barely 40 inches wide. A Piper Cherokee gives you a little more elbow room, but the door is a narrow squeeze, and the step up is just as unforgiving. Getting settled takes a practiced sequence. Left foot on the step, right hand on the door frame, a twist and a drop, then a shuffle to find the seatbelt under the seat cushion. It is a cockpit ballet that gets less graceful every year, but the real barrier is not always physical. There is the unspoken gatekeeping that hangs in the air at every airport. Ask about a plane that is easy to get into and the old instructors lean on the counter and smirk. They will say, real pilots use their feet, or, if you cannot climb in, maybe you should not fly. The Ercoupe, with its wide doors and low sills, gets the same treatment. That is the one for people who cannot handle a real airplane. The joke is older than the airplane itself. The Ercoupe was called the training wheels plane, the handicapped pilot's coupe, or worse. But most of those jokes come from pilots who have never tried to swing a leg into a 415C after 60. The truth is, for many, the hardest part of flying is not the checklist or the weather. It is the climb up to the wing and the sideways drop into a seat that feels 2 inches too low. For every pilot who walks away because of a medical denial, there is another who simply gets tired of feeling like a circus act every time they board their own airplane. That is why a friendly cockpit matters. It is not about pride, it is about keeping your wings when your body starts to argue. The airplanes that respect that reality, the ones you can enter standing tall without a gymnastics routine, are the ones that let you keep flying long after the jokes at the airport stop being funny. Fred Weick was not a typical aircraft designer. He started his career at the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, where he spent his days studying accident reports and wind tunnel data instead of chasing speed records. In the 1930s, the numbers were brutal. Stall spin accidents were claiming pilots by the hundreds every year. The pattern was always the same. A low-time flyer would overshoot the turn to final, yank the yoke, cross the controls, and the airplane would snap into a spin at low altitude. There was no time to recover. The crash reports stacked up, and the industry shrugged, blaming pilot error. Weick saw it differently. He believed you could design the error out of the airplane. In 1937, he entered a government-sponsored safety plane contest with a prototype that looked odd but flew forgivingly. He did not just want to build a better airplane, he wanted to build one that made the most common fatal mistake impossible. His approach was methodical. Limit the elevator travel so the wing could not reach a deep stall, couple the ailerons and rudders, so cross-controlled spins were off the table, and give the airplane enough stability that it would right itself if a pilot got in trouble. By 1939, his Ercoupe was ready for its first flight. The design was so radical that the Civil Aeronautics Authority created a special category for it, characteristically incapable of spinning. The certification language did not just claim safety, it was built on test flights and accident analysis. Weick's brochures did not show pilots doing aerobatics or racing the clock. They showed a calm cockpit, a pilot with one hand on the yoke, and the promise that this was the plane you could trust when everything else went wrong. To pilots who had lived through the stall spin era, that promise was more than marketing, it was a lifeline. Weick had engineered a plane that refused to play by the old rules of risk. Most airplanes give you 3 controls, a yoke for roll and pitch, and a set of pedals for yaw. The Ercoupe throws out that old rulebook. In the original 415C cockpit, there are no rudder pedals, just a yoke and a pair of brakes. On the ground, steering works like a car. In the air, every turn you make is automatically coordinated by a set of mechanical linkages under the floor. Move the yoke left or right, and the ailerons roll the airplane while the rudder follows along, keeping the nose pointed into the turn. There is no way to cross-control, no way to stomp on one pedal and crank the yoke the other way. The geometry of the control system physically blocks the pilot from feeding in the combination that triggers a spin. Weick did not stop at the rudder. He set a hard limit on how far you can pull the yoke back. Most light planes let the elevator travel far enough to drive the wing to a sharp stall. Pull too hard and the nose drops away. In the Ercoupe, the elevator is rigged to stop short of that danger zone. Even with the yoke pulled all the way aft, the wing cannot reach the critical angle that would launch a spin. Instead, the airplane just settles into a mush, a high sink rate, but wings level and fully controllable. The pilot feels the controls get soft, the airplane starts to descend, but there is no violent brake, no snap roll, no sudden loss of control. This is not a trick or a marketing gimmick. The limits are set by hardware, bell cranks, stops, and rods, all measured and locked in at the factory. Control horn geometry and cable runs are designed so that for every degree of roll input, the right amount of yaw is fed in automatically. The elevator stop is set so the wing cannot bite off more than it can chew. It is a mechanical safety net built into the bones of the airplane that makes the classic stall spin accident nearly impossible. For a pilot who wants to keep flying without worrying about surprise stalls or complex footwork, This system is the difference between a close call and a safe landing. Wind gusts rake the runway at 12 knots, almost straight across the center line. In most small airplanes, that is a warning, the kind of crosswind that makes instructors nervous and insurance adjusters sweat. But the Ercoupe lines up, nose cocked into the wind, wings level. There is no last-minute rudder dance, no desperate footwork. The yoke stays steady, left hand guiding the roll, right elbow resting on the windowsill. Pilots watching from the ramp expect trouble. Any Cessna or Piper would need a crab to slip transition, a quick jab of rudder to straighten out just before touchdown. Get it wrong, and the tires screech sideways or the airplane lurches for the grass. But the Ercoupe's trailing link gear is built for this moment. As the wheels meet the pavement, the airplane lands in the crab, still pointed into the wind. The nose wheel, set on a caster, absorbs the side load and swings the nose straight as the weight settles. The main gear flexes, compressing smoothly, soaking up the sideways energy. The airplane does not skip or swerve. It just rolls out, tracking the runway centerline, as if the crosswind never happened. The wind log for the field reads 12 knots, gusting 90 degrees off the nose. That is at the upper end of the Ercoupe's demonstrated crosswind component, but the touchdown is calm and controlled. There is no need to touch the brakes. The airplane slows on its own, trailing link gear handling the side forces that would twist lesser machines. There is no drama, just a quick debrief from the airspeed tape and the windsock. The stigma about the Ercoupe being a toy does not survive this kind of landing. While other pilots are fighting the wind, the Ercoupe is already taxiing to lunch. That is not a trick. That is engineering. There is a line in the federal code that most pilots never read. It is buried in 14 CFR Section 61, right under the section about sport pilot privileges. It says in plain English that if an airplane meets the light sport aircraft definition, 2 seats, fixed gear, a stall speed under 45 knots, and a maximum takeoff weight of 1,320 pounds, you can fly it on nothing more than a valid US driver's license. No aviation medical required. No more waiting rooms, no more blood draws, no more letters stamped, denied. The Ercoupe 415C, by a twist of fate and paperwork, fits this rule almost perfectly. The original type certificate, issued in the 1940s, lists a maximum gross weight of 1,260 pounds. That is not a rounded number. It is the result of slide rule math and a little bit of luck. The airplane was built decades before anyone thought of light sport, but it lands just 60 pounds under the modern limit. That single number is the difference between a lifetime of medical renewals and the right to keep flying as long as you can drive a car. For pilots over 60, this is not just trivia. It is an escape hatch. The law says as long as you have not had a medical denied or revoked, you can exercise sport pilot privileges in a qualifying Ercoupe. That means local flights, 1 passenger, daytime VFR, and no trips above 10,000 feet. But for most, those are the flights that matter anyway. The ones that keep you in the air, not fighting the system. Not every Ercoupe qualifies. Only certain 415C models with the right paperwork and no modifications that push the weight higher fit under the light sport umbrella. The answer is written on the type certificate and in the aircraft logs, not on the paint job. But for those that do, the privilege is real. The FAA calls it driver's license medical. Pilots call it freedom. The Ercoupe is the only certified airplane from its era that slides under the bar by design, not by accident. It is a loophole you can park in your hangar, and for many, it is the last legal way to keep your wings without ever seeing an aviation medical examiner again. A quick search for Ercoupe for sale will turn up a dozen listings, but not every airplane with a smiling nose and twin tails is the safe, loophole-friendly machine you want. The original 415C is the one that checks all the right boxes, no rudder pedals, factory certified at 1,260 pounds, and eligible for driver's license flying. But over the years, the Ercoupe family tree grew sideways. Forney, Arlon, and even Mooney built their own versions, sometimes adding conventional pedals, sometimes raising the gross weight, and sometimes both. What looks like a classic on the ramp might hide a set of pedal wells under the carpet or a logbook entry that bumps the airplane out of light sport territory. Caution. The first thing to check is the data plate and the paperwork. The model code should read 415C. Anything labeled D, CD, or G, or carrying a Forney, Alon, or Mooney badge needs a closer look. Some later models were modified with rudder pedals or heavier engines, which means they no longer qualify for sport pilot privileges. Even among 415Cs, decades of owner modifications, bigger wheels, new radios, and engine swaps can tip the scales above the legal limit. The only way to know is to pull the weight and balance sheet, find the original type certificate, and verify the serial number against the FAA database. Type clubs and owner forums keep running lists of light sport eligible serials, but nothing beats a direct check with the paperwork in hand. Check the documents. The cockpit tells its own story. On a true 415C, the floor is flat, no pedal wells, no linkage for your feet to find. If you see pedals or even a blocked off opening where they once were, treat it as a caution flag. Some conversions are reversible, but others are not. Insurance brokers and FAA inspectors have seen every possible combination, and when in doubt they look at the logs and the hardware, not the paint. Price is another reality check. An original, unmodified 415C in airworthy condition will usually run between $25,000 and $40,000. Later models with more power, or those with rare upgrades, can go higher but may not offer the same regulatory escape hatch. If a deal looks too good, dig deeper. Missing logs, unclear modifications, or a mystery about which model you are buying are all reasons to walk away. The right Ercoupe is a ticket to freedom. The wrong one is just another project, or worse, a grounded airplane with no legal way out. Aging doesn't have to ground a good pilot. Thanks to a quirk of FAA rules, more Ercoupe 415C models fly today under a driver's license than any other classic plane. A loophole and also a lifeline. In a world obsessed with complexity, real freedom sometimes means choosing the simplest machine. The sky is still open if you know where to look. Share your thoughts below.